just keep persevering and don't listen to what anybody says except the people that are around you that want you to be successful and your family.
Welcome, Hanna, to the FITTEAM show.
Thank you.
Excited to have you on today. Hanna's a professional race car driver, and look forward for you to share your story with our audience.
Yeah.
To kick it off, just share 30, 60 seconds, a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, I'm a professional race car driver, like you said, and I'm from Indiana. I've been racing since I was 7 years old. I started in go-karts and then moved into race cars when I was 15. And ever since then, I've kind of just been working, every day to keep the dream alive and race cars, every year, even though it's a tough business, but I'm still here.
So when did you first race?
My first race car race, when I was 15, I think I'm really spacing. I think it was like in the middle of the summer of when I was 15. I really don't know what year that was. I think maybe it was 2015, 16, something like that. But yeah, I was in a Spec Miata.
What other hobbies did you have growing up before racing?
Honestly, I didn't really have a ton because I was so busy, racing go-karts and stuff. It kind of took up a big portion of my time. I liked animals. I liked to go outside and run around and, go jump in the lake in my backyard and try and go find like turtles and frogs and things to that nature. But I guess those aren't really hobbies. It was just kind of me being weird.
How was school for you growing up?
School was actually kind of rough for me, just because, I was the girl that liked racing and people thought that was kind of weird. So kids didn't really, take to me. They just kind of thought I was a weirdo. So I was kind of like an outcast. But I think it kind of turned out good in the long run.
So why racing?
I didn't really put myself into racing. My dad was a fan of racing and, he just kind of did it as a hobby. And he always had it on the TV. We were always like watching NASCAR, and I remember watching Danica race when I was younger, and I just kind of told my dad one day that I wanted to do it. Like, I still remember like sitting in the living room watching TV and saying, yeah, I want to do that. And then eventually he took me to a go-kart track and put me in a go-kart, and it was kind of the end of that.
Where are you currently living, and where did you grow up?
Currently I'm living in Fort Lauderdale, and I actually grew up in Granger, Indiana. So I escaped the snow. I was tired of it.
How long ago did you do that?
I left Indiana last year. I think, last year. In, I think, April. Or, no, I was way earlier than that. It was, I think, February when I left.
Obviously, you're in a sport, it's not easy. So share some of the struggles you had early on and then even more so now.
Yeah, I think the biggest struggle that I've dealt with, I guess my whole career is just, I don't come from a family that has, the budget to pay to go racing, because racing is kind of one of those pay-to-play sports. If it's not you paying, it's somebody else that's paying. So my whole career, it's been a struggle to be able to find funding to keep going. But I've been really lucky with a lot of opportunities that have made it possible for me to keep going. And I guess sometimes being a girl in the sport can be tough because you have to really prove yourself extra, and some people don't take you seriously, and I've really had to fight and get in people's face to be taken seriously. So that's a couple of the struggles.
What about some things that you accomplished so far?
I think staying in racing is a big accomplishment in itself because, people like me don't really 100% make it all the time because, again, it is a pay-to-play sport. So the fact that I'm still here and still getting opportunities, I think, is a big accomplishment. But then also I've competed in IMSA, which is probably one of the most premier sports car racing series in the world. Which is also a big accomplishment just because, again, I didn't come from anything. Just being quick and still finding opportunities and, just doing well, I think is probably one of my biggest accomplishments in general.
What goals do you have moving forward?
Moving forward, I want to race IMSA more. I want to make it to the top level. I want to compete in the Rolex 24. And maybe even Le Mans someday. Just basically any car that I drive or race, I just want to win every time I get into a car. So I guess maybe my goals moving forward are to win more.
You mentioned Danica. You looked up to her younger on. You have probably, I'm sure, many people looking up to you for what you're doing in the sport. How does that feel?
It feels pretty good. I mean, and sometimes I look at it and I kind of laugh because I'm like, I don't have all my ducks in a row, you know, like I'm struggling just like anybody else is. But yeah, I mean, it's cool to have people to look up to me and they see me at the racetrack and think I'm inspiring. I mean, and that's kind of the biggest message that I try and send out is that you can do basically whatever you want to do. You just have to kind of put the work in and not listen to the people that tell you that you can't do it.
So somebody that's getting started in racing, what tips do you have for them?
I would say to have some tough skin because it's rough. It's a rough sport, rough industry to be in. And, you know, to just keep persevering and don't listen to what anybody says except the people that are around you that want you to be successful and your family.
How does someone even get started in racing?
Well, I mean, how I got started was in go-karting. But I mean, it's just really driving anything that you race, I guess, and it kind of just naturally progresses from there. Yeah.
So teamwork's obviously extremely important. The people you surround yourself with. Let's talk about at an early age. You mentioned your dad, and then even now, some of the people behind the scenes that have helped you grow to where you're at.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when early on it was more my family. And then just kind of as the years went on, you know, you kind of start adding a bunch of people in your corner that are going to be there in the long run because they want to see you be successful. But yeah, I mean, it's just a lot of people in the racing industry that, you know, want to see me be successful too. That, you know, the word kind of gets around and it's like, oh, like Hanna doesn't have a ride, and everybody kind of like jumps on that and like tries to help me figure out like, okay, how do we get you into this? And it's really cool. Like the industry can really like, it can either really help you or it could really hurt you. And I've been through both. So yeah, I mean, just it is like I try and keep my circle pretty small still, just because you have to be kind of careful of the people that you let in your corner. And I think that's with any industry. But yeah, I mean, it's still my family's still first and foremost, though.
Who else could, besides outside your family, that's helping you today?
Well, I mean, I have a couple, you know, friends that have, you know, been helping me try and succeed. I mean, Geronimo, who's here. And, you know, he's just an example of, you know, a bunch of friends that I have that, you know, I'm constantly going to, bouncing ideas off of, or they're introducing me to somebody, just because the sport is also based on relationships. So, you know, you just kind of go around and try and get yourself introduced to different people and see what opportunities you can kind of pull out of meeting people.
When you started, you probably even have it now, you said people were doubting you, questioning you, but do you have anyone close to you when you started, and maybe even so now, that you feel like doesn't support you 100%?
No, I wouldn't say that, just because if they don't, I just get them out of my corner.
Right. No, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. We tell people, focus on the people, you know, that believe in you, inspire you, you want to be around. And sometimes it's tough because if you have family or some people you can't get away from, you have to just minimize your time with them.
Right.
So, but that's great. You don't have anybody that's in
Yeah.
that situation holding you back.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my grandma, she like really doesn't like the whole race car driver idea. She kind of wishes I'd go to college and get a real job, but she knows that's not going to happen. So, I mean, I guess I would probably be an example.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Talk about just belief, like just, you know, the belief you have to have in yourself.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you really, you have to have a, like, you have to be overconfident. I'd almost feel like, you know, and just, again, like the negative thoughts, anytime they come through, I kind of just figure a way to cycle them out of my head and just kind of think like, oh, they're just hating, you know, like that's their problem. That's not mine, you know, and I always try and direct it more towards that person, be like, oh, that's just kind of their own insecurities, I think, coming out.
Right. What's a typical day look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm not racing, a typical week is usually me calling or sending emails to people that can, you know, help me get back into a ride. And I do coaching, so that's kind of how I make my income. And then a lot of working out, you know, because you have to stay fit to race. Yeah, and it's again, my whole life is pretty like surrounded by racing.
So a typical race day, to walk us through what happens like when you first show up at the track.
When I first show up at the track, usually it's a lot of relaxing, trying not to let my head get the best of me. And this, in the sport, you have to be really calm, because the second you're stressing out, you start to drive bad. And yeah, I mean, it's a lot of debriefing, kind of going over like what the day is going to look like, and trying to, I guess, plan as much as you can of what's going to happen in the race, or if you're qualifying, practicing, whatever it is. Usually, you kind of have an agenda of things you have to accomplish for the day. So it just really depends on the day, but a lot of it is, again, just trying to, I guess, go as fast as you can and beat everybody.
Before the racers, obviously, you mentioned the debriefing, and I know there's like you get together and you hear the rules and what not to do, what to do. I don't know what the term is for that.
Yeah.
But talk a little bit about that, because that's interesting.
Yeah. So I mean, with debriefing, usually we go over like data acquisition. So we like look at ways we can go quicker. So we look at a bunch of squiggly lines and see where we can find an advantage or make something better that could be better, whether it's the driver or it's the car. So it's a lot of trying to maximize what you can get out of everything. Yeah, so a lot of data, a lot of video. We look at videos and like seeing, you could be over a little more to the right just to get this like little tenth, that people would even think about. Yeah, so it's just kind of, again, trying to get the best out of the situation.
What's your favorite car to drive?
So far, the best car I've driven would be the LMP3. It's kind of like a Batmobile. It has downforce and it drives like a sports car at the same time. So it's kind of in my wheelhouse because I enjoy that. And then also I've driven Porsches and I love Porsches, so they kind of are up in that wheelhouse as well. So
where do you spend most of your time training?
I just go to 24-hour fitness. Or is it 20 or LA Fitness or something? No, it's not 24 hours. It's definitely LA Fitness. 24-hour fitness was when I lived in California because they have a lot of 24-hour fitnesses there. But yeah, I mean, I like to run outside too. And I like to go play in the ocean, and that's kind of a pretty good workout as well.
What do you do for practice as far as driving?
We usually will use simulators because unfortunately, like, racing is pretty hard to practice for unless you get a deal. But yeah, I mean, we'll do some test days. I mean, if I do have a ride and, provided there is testing along with that. But a lot of it's a video game, a lot of simulation and I guess mental preparation as well, and looking at videos. I mean, that's really the only way you can prepare for it. You kind of have to show up and just, I guess, do it.
You already mentioned how it's tough to kind of get out there, and when you get started in racing, awareness is important. Obviously, I think you're doing a phenomenal job on social media. Let's talk about that for just a few minutes. What's your favorite social media platform?
I would say Instagram.
Instagram?
Yeah.
Okay, if you would, just give everybody your Instagram handle so they can look you up and add you.
Okay. Yeah, my Instagram is at Hanna Zellers, so HANNA, and then ZELLERS, and that's all of my all my handles. If they want to find me on my Facebook page as well.
Okay, one more time the handle.
HANNA ZELLERS. Yeah.
All right. Do you like the addition of stories on there now? Do you use stories quite a bit?
I do. Yeah. I mean, I more so use them for things that I don't really feel like having out there for forever, Mm-hmm. Just for what I'm doing that day, because I don't want to blow everybody's feet up with a bunch of random food items that I'm eating. I don't think they'd really appreciate what I ate for dinner every night.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's I enjoy Instagram. I think it's cool.
Talk about a little bit about building your brand online on Instagram, like how you've done what you've done. You're obviously doing something right because you've created a great following in a short period of time.
Right. Well, I mean, I basically just tell my story. I think people, like, log on Instagram every day and see like perfection, but that's not me. And I've had to really go through some hard times to get to the good times. And I think people have just enjoyed watching the whole, I guess, journey unfold. So I think, I mean, that seems to be why they follow me, because everybody, leaves comments talking about how inspiring it is and everything, and how they followed me for so long and have seen the growth, and I guess that's what makes it fun for me. Like, I never really got into racing to make money or anything like that. I just did it because I wanted to see how far I could go.
Well, you're obviously doing a great job, and I think you're just getting started.
Yeah, I think so too.
So, what about some things? What's like the next event or some of the next events you have coming up here in the next few months to share with people that are in our audience around the country, around them?
Yeah, so we'll be racing in Fara. So I'll be racing with my teammate Geronimo, and we will be racing around Florida in a Porsche 997. And then, yeah, just working on rides to try and get back into pro racing for next year, because my last race was just this past weekend. So it's trying to, get plans for next year as well.
So anyone that wants to be successful, they have to continue to work on themselves and their mindset and believe in themselves and work ethic. Talk about mindset and work ethic and importance.
Well, for your mindset, you have to be confident again. And I kind of wish I would take my own advice, but, because sometimes I get in those low paces too, but you just have to really just keep believing in yourself. And even though people tell you it's not possible, like, you just have to ignore them and just keep going and just do what feels right in your gut. And then with your work ethic too, like, things aren't going to be handed to you. Like, you have to really, like, push hard to get what you want. And, not expect to just sit around and, have, things handed to you.
What are some things that you'd want people to know about you that you haven't mentioned so far?
I guess that I have maybe a soft side, I guess, like, just because everybody sees this hard-ass race car driver, so, I guess I have a soft side, and I'm kind of girly too, even though it doesn't 100% look like that some of the time.
So besides racing, what else do you do currently? What else do you like to do?
Right now, now that I live in Florida, and I've wanted to live in Florida my entire life, and I, kind of did that. I like to go play in the ocean. I like to go boating. I like to, just go swim and snorkel. I've just recently started doing some hunting. So we were, like, going lobstering and, fishing. So it's that's fun too.
So it must have been interesting when you grew up racing and went and did your driver's test, right? Your driver's education.
Yeah, when I was younger, I actually failed my driver's test just because I was speeding. I failed to come to a complete stop, and I didn't pull into, I guess when you turn right, you have to pull into the lane that's closest to you, and I just pulled into whatever lane, and I guess like 3 lanes of traffic. So that was always a funny story, just because it kind of makes sense that I would fail according to speeding.
Have you ever gotten a speeding ticket?
Yes. I have gotten plenty of speeding tickets, actually. Sometimes I've been doing 40 over. One time me and my friend Gray actually got pulled over in a Lamborghini doing like 140 or so. I wasn't driving, just to put that out there. And we actually got let go, too. The guy was like, I get it, like, it's a cool car, and, I'd probably speed too, and he let us go. It was really surprising, actually. And I've gotten out of a couple speeding tickets, but a couple speeding tickets I have not got out of. And a lot of times I pull got back from the racetrack, and I can't really get it out of my head, and some people enjoy it, and some people don't.
It's a good line. What other funny stories do you have?
I guess a funny story that I have is when I did my first pro race. So it was my first LMP3 race, and it was a thing that happened with pit limiter. So pit limiter basically is you push this button when you're driving down pit lane, and it doesn't let the car accelerate over a certain mile per hour. So I have never driven pit limiter before. This is my first ever experience with it. And so I asked the guys, I was like, so what do I do? Like, they're like, oh, just keep your foot to the ground. And, the pit limiter will stop you. And, that's it. I was like, okay. So I'm going down pit lane, and I have my foot all the way to the ground, get to the end of pit lane, take pit limiter off, and I spin the car and I hit the inside wall in pit lane. Oh. Because what I didn't realize with pit limiter was that the acceleration comes on very quickly. It's not like a gradual, like you think it would be, like, oh, you take it off and it would gradually build up speed. No, like, you have 100% of everything right away. So my first pro race, I didn't even make it out of pit lane because I spun in pit lane.
So it was a little embarrassing.
It was very embarrassing. Yeah.
Any other stories you have like that?
Not that I can really think of at the moment.
So you learned from the experience.
Yeah, I did. I'm always scared to take pit limiter off. I'm like, like freaking out, like, and I like squint as I do it because I'm like, like, you know, I don't want this to happen again.
We want to thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing your story. We look forward to watching your future success.
Yeah, thank you for having me.